Imagine a super-alloy steel drill bit forged under thousands of tons of pressure. Suddenly, it warps and flows like warm clay upon touching the deep earth. Imagine an entire colossal lake vanishing into the heart of the planet in just a few dozen minutes. This terrifying event unfolds through nothing more than a small, harmless borehole. A massive mountain that stood tall for millions of years suddenly slides. It crashes down into a water reservoir in just 45 brief seconds. This collapse generates a tsunami of compressed air that tears through the valley below. These are not scenarios from fantasy movies. This is reality, a cold reality where the greatest megastructures are broken. They were designed by the most brilliant engineering minds in the world. We still take pride in our skyscrapers reaching for the clouds. We take pride in our dams holding back raging floods and our tunnels piercing through rock mountains. We believe that with enough steel, enough concrete, and complex mathematical models running on supercomputers, this Earth will have to bow in submission. But this planet always has a way of telling its own story. It is a story that is quiet, patient, and unbound by formulas on paper. This video does not merely tell the story of failures in concrete and steel structures. It is a journey unmasking the limits of the human ego when trying to redraw the physical map of the Earth. Leave your preconceptions behind before witnessing these 10 great collapses. After witnessing them, you will realize an important truth. We actually understand far less about the world beneath our feet than we think. An expansive airport terminal, brightly lit but completely silent without a single soul. How did an icon of German technological discipline suffer the fate of abandonment for 9 long years? This entire failure was caused by just a fire ventilation system. Instead of letting hot smoke rise into the sky, engineers wanted to use pressure to suck the smoke backward down into the basement. But what happens when a man-made system becomes too complex to control? Tens of thousands of sensors malfunctioned, exhaust valves jammed, and people discovered a truth. The chief fire designer was actually just an apprentice draftsman who faked his credentials. The principle of thermodynamics is simple. Hot smoke always rises. Forcing the airflow against the laws of nature created a compressive force that overloaded the ducts. To this day, how a person without credentials bypassed the inspection system remains an enigma. Experienced engineers stood helplessly watching their careers slip away. They had to endure hopeless troubleshooting meetings. Smart technology sometimes annihilates its own most basic function. The fracture within Berlin's chimney system reveals an obvious truth. Drawings on paper and physical reality always contain invisible chasms. In Germany, the stubbornness lay in forcing a physical law to go against nature. Meanwhile, across the ocean, engineers faced a massive challenge. How to translate a dream of free art into standing concrete structures. That dream possessed absolutely no geometric rules and had to defy Earth's gravity. Pristine white concrete, sails proudly stretch out into the windswept Sydney Harbor. But why did brilliant structural engineers have to spend 6 grueling years? They spent that entire time just to decode the geometry of a few curved masses. Utzen's sketch was drawn entirely by hand, following no standard equations. How to distribute the colossal bending forces without an internal support column system? Primitive computers of that era ran for thousands of hours but were all deadlocked by the undefined curved surface. The solution appeared completely unexpected. All the sails were cut from a single sphere. This allowed the concrete ribs to share the exact same radius of curvature for precasting. Did the architect know his drawings were mathematically impossible? Or was he simply forcing science to chase art? Utzen ultimately left Australia in bitterness, never returning to look upon his lifelong masterpiece. Art pushes the boundaries of science, but the price to pay is sometimes very steep. Those are the quiet fractures within the heart of the pioneer. The sails in Sydney stand firm thanks to the harmony of the original sphere. Humans brought that mathematical confidence into the hearts of bustling megacities, where square steel boxes soar high, blotting out the sky. Yet, they forgot an invisible force constantly moving around the edges of buildings. That is the wind, not the head-on winds that are easily measured. These are air currents moving diagonally, ready to turn a tower into a ticking time bomb. For a 59-story high-rise, hovering on 4 colossal column foundations offset at the edges. How did a simple wind load calculation error turn a building into a ticking time bomb? The V-shaped wind bracing system was originally designed to bear head-on wind pressure perfectly. But what happens when the wind blows diagonally at 45 degrees, generating maximum torsional force? Meanwhile, the contractor arbitrarily replaced the load-bearing welds with ordinary bolts. A phone call from an architecture student forced the chief engineer to recalculate. He realized the horrifying truth. The building could collapse in a major storm. For weeks, crews of welders silently reinforced the joints through the night. The work took place in absolute secrecy to avoid a panicked evacuation in Manhattan. The failure report was hidden for nearly 20 years, leaving behind the mystery of a fragile boundary. That is the boundary between life and death. The moral responsibility of the engineer is greater than any fear of falling from grace. The silent redemption in New York proves a mechanical reality. Even within the heart of fortified megacities, we are still walking on thin wires. However, if in Manhattan, the enemy of the engineers was the invisible wind blowing through the sky, elsewhere, the battle took place beneath the continental shelf. We strive to build structures that not only reach high, but also encroach upon the ocean. We set goals to engineer colossal artificial islands. We believe that the deep silt shelf at the bottom of the sea will submissively support millions of tons of sand and stone. But the ocean always has its own rhythm, and the flexible mud accumulated over millions of years is not easily conquered. It does not easily lie still under the artificial weight of a modern runway. A colossal artificial island sits isolated in the middle of Osaka Bay, slowly sinking deep into the bottom. Why were Japan's finest geologists helpless before this billion-dollar project? They could not stop the island from sinking more than 11 meters. People once believed the sinking rate would stop after the compressed sand layer saturated the force. But the flexible mud layer at a depth of 100 meters below the seabed continued to compress tightly. This compression process was completely outside of all theoretical predictions. How to maintain balance for a terminal over a kilometer long when the ground settles unevenly? The answer lies in thousands of colossal hydraulic jacks installed beneath the foundation columns. The system continuously balances each millimeter of the structure manually every time the airport sinks. Will this island ever reach absolute stability, or will the ocean reclaim its old position? The Japanese engineers must accept living in a state of permanent vigilance beneath the dark basement. Human resilience is sometimes expressed through a war of eternal maintenance against nature. It is by no means an absolute victory. In Kansai, humans had to battle the gentle but persistent shifting of a soft mud layer. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the battle took place in suffocating darkness. It is the darkness within the heart of sheer granite mountains, where nature does not resist with slow subsidence, but with high-pressure underground floods. They were imprisoned for millions of years behind ancient rock faces, ready to snap any steel drill bit. A dark tunnel hole pierces through the heart of a sheer granite mountain. Inside, water roars violently. How did California's lifeline of water almost drown the very project supplying it? For when blasting hard rock, the drills accidentally pierced ancient geological barriers. This released underground water pockets compressed over millions of years. What happens when water erupts at maximum pressure, blowing away machinery weighing tons? The flooding torrent submerged miles of the construction site, forcing workers to labor in chest-deep mud for 6 years. The San Jacinto fault system acts as a natural water trap, accumulating immense hydrostatic pressure. With the technology of that era, the location of the next water pocket was a completely dark enigma. Engineers had to continuously pump thousands of tons of liquid cement to freeze the underground river. They had to do that before they could continue digging. Every drop of water we waste in megacities comes at a price. They are traded for the ultimate fear of the pioneers deep within the mountain. The underground flood within the heart of the San Jacinto Mountain is a costly reminder. The Earth is not a static entity for humans to carve at will. It is a living planet, containing colossal energies locked under pressure. Yet, humans still did not stop before those challenges. The need to understand the deepest structures drove us to push beyond transportation tunnels. We wanted to touch the boundary of the Earth's crust to see directly what happens at record depths. In an ambitious scientific race, we manufactured super-resilient drill bits. They were aimed straight down into the wild earth of the far north. However, we had to realize that there are temperature and pressure boundaries that force us to surrender. A rusty iron cap, welded tight with colossal bolts, sits lonely amidst the white snow. Why did a borehole the width of a dinner plate break the ambition of a scientific superpower? People once predicted the temperature at a depth of 12 kilometers would be only around 100 degrees. But in reality, the temperature soared to 180 degrees, turning hard granite into a plastic gel. This plastic layer stuck to the drill bits and choked the borehole itself. Electronic sensors were baked crisp, and steel cables snapped continuously under the non-linear heat. We still cannot scan the actual structure of the Earth's crust beyond indirect measurements. The Soviet scientists, who spent their lives beside the drilling tower, had to accept sealing the project. There are physical boundaries that this planet sets to remind mankind of their size. The Kola borehole closed in the research silence of the Arctic scientists. This was a costly lesson, but it did not cost human lives. Yet, that engineering arrogance was brought to the surface to build dams blocking raging floods. When that happens, a geological error is no longer a mere scientific enigma. It transforms into a scythe of death, ready to level a bustling valley in an instant. An entire disaster, all because of a small, murky leak ignored beneath the dam foundation. A solitary, fractured concrete block stands tall in the arid valley of California. It looks like a colossal decayed tooth of time, and it is all that remains. Before the disaster struck, people saw murky water leaking beneath the dam. But the renowned chief engineer ignored it, believing in the solidity of concrete. He forgot that concrete may be hard, but the tufa rock beneath the dam abutment is not. When saturated with water, this type of rock softens and disintegrates like clay. In just a few minutes, the foundation vanished and a 40-meter wall of water crashed down upon the valley. The truth here is not a common calculation error. It is a lesson that nature never negotiates with an individual's reputation. William Mulholland paid the ultimate price for ignoring a water-saturated dam foundation. But it seems that painful lesson was still not enough to awaken human humility. Just a few decades later, across the ocean, engineers continued to build a megadam. At the foot of Italy's majestic Alps, one of the thinnest and tallest arch dams in the world was born. They believed they could control the movement of an entire mountain with mathematical models on paper. Visualize a thin concrete arch dam standing perfectly firm between two sheer rock walls. But behind that 260-meter-high dam, there is not a single drop of water. The reservoir bed is completely filled by a dry mountain of earth and rock. How did an intact dam cause a disaster that wiped out entire towns below? Engineers believed they could control the slopes of Mount Tauk by raising and lowering the reservoir's water levels. They wanted the mountain to stabilize itself according to static mathematical models on drawing paper. But the mountain did not operate according to models, and 260 million cubic meters of earth and rock collapsed. This colossal mass plunged into the reservoir in just 45 brief seconds. It launched the entire body of water into the sky, creating a tsunami of extreme pressure, compressed air. The blast of air wiped out all life below before the water could even overtop the dam. The proud arch dam still stood firm after the disaster, like a meaningless wall of concrete. It stands as the clearest proof that we can build the most perfect structures. However, if we ignore the rhythms and shifts of nature's foundation, then that perfection is merely a monument to human helplessness. The Vajont tsunami crushed the arrogance of structural mathematics in the Alpine Valley. In Italy, the failure came from a localized slope, but history has witnessed a grander defeat. It was an imperial defeat when humans tried to tear open a tropical isthmus. They wanted to rewrite the global maritime map by applying old formulas to an unfamiliar ecosystem. In the jungles of Panama, colossal steam shovels are now nothing but rusty skeletons. They are swallowed by vines and green moss after more than a century of abandonment. Ferdinand de Lesseps, the hero who conquered the Suez Desert, believed he could apply the same formula. But on the Isthmus of Panama, he did not face sand, he faced a living ecosystem. Every time they dug deep into the mountain slopes, water-saturated tropical clay collapsed overnight. The phenomenon occurred as if the earth were healing a gash on its own flesh. Added to that were disease-bearing parasites causing yellow fever, devastating the labor force. The French engineering empire collapsed not from a lack of money, but from the stubborn imposition of a formula. They brought experience from a static desert to impose upon a dynamic jungle. This act transformed the ambition of conquest into endless green graves. The rusty ruins in the Panama jungle stand as a monument to the severe fracturing of nature. Yet, stepping into the 21st century, that stubbornness shifted toward a more macro scale. It is the ambition to display political ego through a record-high concrete pyramid, a symbol of the absolute rupture between grand aspirations and foundational material quality. A 300-meter-high concrete pyramid stands tall, silent, like a forgotten mountain. This is not merely a financial missed appointment, it is a story about the limits of materials. When concrete is poured on a colossal scale, a quiet chemical reaction takes place within its core. That is the heat of hydration, and without a cooling flow of energy, crystals will not bind. They generate millions of microfissures in the dark, turning the structure into a weak honeycomb. Humans can draw unimaginable heights on paper, but they cannot command molecules to bond. From the silent corridors of Berlin, through the flexible mud layer of Osaka, to the rusty iron cap at the Kola borehole. All of these locations carry a shared, quiet message to mankind. They were never stories about the failure of concrete, steel, or blueprint errors. They are mirrors reflecting the ego of a small species that carries grand aspirations. A species that wants to use straight lines and right angles to reshape a non-linear planet. But the physical reality of the Earth does not operate according to formulas on a drawing page. It moves to the rhythm of underground currents, heat, continental shelves, and self-healing. The power of knowledge lies in the deep humility to understand our own limits. When megastructures turn to dust, this planet will still continue its billion-year journey. And the greatest lesson left behind is simply to learn to listen to nature more. Learn to walk more gently upon the sacred foundation of earth and stone beneath our feet.